All right. Brian Wang and I today are not going to be political. And yet, in a way, we are. Because, well, at least I am. And then I'll let Brian decide what he's going to do with it. But we've had a very long prep time just now where we've talked about this in detail. And I've come to this conclusion. I believe that Elon Musk needs to totally get into the ear of the future President Trump. He needs to get into his ear in a major way right now, not 6 months from now, not a year from now. And if Kamala wants to follow, if Kamala Harris wants to follow along like she has on so many other things and agree to this, I'm all for it. But this is exactly the right time for Trump to come out with a moonshot project, with a Manhattan project, with a U.S. project like the Interstate Highway Project of the 50s that Eisenhower championed. This is a time where Trump could become the bully pulpit that the presidency should be, where he can get out there and say, we need right now, all hands on deck, to get to be the energy leader of the world. He said this already when he was in power before, but in this case, it needs to not only be all of the above, it needs to have a concentration in solar, wind, batteries, and nuclear. And this needs to happen with everybody agreeing and moving forward with that project in mind. And Brian Wang, you say?
Yes, I agree that this needs to be done. It's basically a mobilization of the economy, which is if people study, World War II or wars and that kind of thing, and it's not necessarily a war, but it's an economic competition. And in order to get your economy going for war in World War II, there was a mobilization of the economy, which basically I was only doing 2-3% of my economy, building some weapons, doing some stuff, and then I convert it, mobilize it to upwards of 40%, 50%, where it's like I'm all in on doing that stuff. And so this is the same kind of thing, where it's like we want to move in this direction that it will be beneficial to all of us, and so we need to have leadership and all businesses and things working toward, and society recognizing this would be the good direction to move the world and the economy.
So it would be beneficial in that it will allow us to accomplish the productivity that we're hoping to see out of switching to electricity, out of potentially Bitcoin and other kinds of currencies, and out of bringing the rest of the world up to a higher standard of living, not to mention switching over as rapidly as we can to renewables and things that don't use CO2 or create particulates in the air. So we have all these benefits that are going to come out of this over the next potentially 6 to 10 years or so. But there's also, we are also in an economic war. It has now turned into a new bipolar world where it's China versus United States economically. And we want to win that economic war as well, not because we want China to lose, but because we want to retain the lead as much as possible. Help me understand more about that.
So Eric Schmidt, ex-CEO of Google, had a big talk at Stanford, and he explained that in this new AI world, it's a very financially intense. You need to put billions, tens of billions, hundred billions, and soon trillions of dollars into it, and it requires a lot of energy, a lot of compute. So it's a massive transformation of your economy, similar to industrialization in the 1800s and early 1900s, where you go from agricultural to being 90% of the economy to industry being 90%, and agriculture is still growing, but then only 10%, just because your economy went up literally 100 times, right? So this is the scale of what's going to happen here. And the two main countries, number one, number two, are China and the United States on this. The other countries matter, and they're doing things. So India will have a big role to play, but it's computers, AI, and energy are tightly linked. It's like in the physics. If I do this much compute, if I do more compute, I will use more energy. I can try and be more efficient, but ultimately it has a physical thing, a physics to it, right? And so if I want to say I have the most compute for AI in order to win, I must also have the most energy. If I don't, I can, with some more efficiency, maybe make up 4 times. But if I end up with 10 times, 20 times more energy and more compute, I will beat the guy even if he's 4 times more efficient than I am. So that's the competition we have to have.
All right. And so right now, China is out in terms of the acceleration of their energy production capacity. It isn't even close between us and the United States. The United States has been perfectly happy to increase their energy production rather by very small amounts over the last 40 years because we're becoming way more efficient in the way that we use energy. And so we just have, and our economy has just been growing along nicely, 2.5%, 3% a year. China, in the meantime, has been growing their economy 10, 15% per year, year after year after year, because what? They were coming from a third world nation with 1 billion people in poverty, and they needed to create a tremendous amount of energy to bring those people out of poverty. And they recognize this, and they've done it. As a central government, this is the one thing you can say they've accomplished, is to dramatically increase the energy. Moreover, they recognized, I guess, 10, 15 years ago that they should move towards the renewables because basically they don't have oil and they don't have coal.
Right. Well, they have a lot of coal, but they need, yeah.
But they still import tons of coal from Australia.
Right.
So
right.
they're not a very resource rich country. So by reason of their paucity of natural resources, they said, hey, we got to do this with solar, wind, and batteries. And they've done it mostly with solar and batteries, and dams has been another big area that they've done, but they run out of places to put dams. So they are now up against, but they're producing massive solar farms. And of course, all 90% of the solar, 90% of the batteries are made in China right now. So go ahead.
Right. So if people think of it that ultimately there is and people recognize limitations to oil, natural gas, and coal. And even though we could, in theory, pull out 10 times more, you don't want to do it because it's so dirty, right? So for economic and other reasons, basically we've hit near limits on that, right? And so we're converting into a world of a lot of solar and batteries, and perhaps mass-produced nuclear fission. And so China's working on all those future things. And if you were to say, in the current world, and the world for the last almost 100 years, whoever had the most oil and energy was the most powerful nation, also the richest nation. There is a tight correlation between amount of energy and wealth per capita. Energy per capita, US, I don't know, 20,000 kilowatt hours per person. Translate to that, nearly $100,000, like $70,000, $100,000 per person, right? If I'm way less energy, like someplace, in a slightly less developed country, Thailand or something like that, maybe 10 times less energy, 10 times less money per person. I go to 100 times less energy, and there you have, nothing. I can't plug anything into the wall. Right. I'm in Africa. I'm using a little bit of like coal or kerosene for lighting a lamp or something like that, and basically I'm poor, right? So this correlation between how much energy I have running this laptop, running these lights, running the air conditioning, life is better, and whatever, you can just run the calculations, and that is better. So you need to have energy to have a good life. So then if the energy is no longer oil, if it's because that was limited and we didn't go 10 times as much, and then it's mostly going to be solar and batteries and nuclear, whatever the mix is, right? But the new energy, right? Then which nation will be the richest at that point? Well, the one that had the most energy. Oh, the one who built all the solar and batteries. Well, that had to be China, right? However you compete, you can't outcompete the fact that I have, say, 10 times, like no matter how smart some guy is in Africa, the fact that they have no power or energy means they can't build stuff, right? They can't build a factory, right? And so they're poor. So basically, if you say, oh, I'm the grandparents of my grandkids, who will have the energy, who's gonna be rich? Oh, it's not us. My grandkids are poor because we chose not to build energy or build a lot less of it. So the other guys, right now it's close. It's, they only have double, right? What we have, trying to double the energy we have. But then in 30 years, they have 10 times as much, right? So then who has more per capita income at that point?
Right. Yes. All right. And as you've pointed out on multiple other times that you and I have had this conversation on your channel and on my channel, is that we're not just looking at the requirement to build millions and millions and millions of solar cells or solar panels. I mean, in addition to all the AI stuff, but that's going to happen. I think that's a done deal. We don't need the government to be involved in that at all. We don't need any political leadership in order to get the AI part of it done. They're going to build that stuff. Ask normal competition in the United States is already taking care of that quite nicely, thank you. But on the other side of it, you're talking about a very complex set of things that has to happen. You're not just looking at, oh, okay, we've got steam engines now. Let's build a lot of tracks and put a lot of steam engines on the tracks. And here's some good ideas of where those might go. We'll give you right-of-ways. We're looking at, we need transformers. We need those right-of-ways. We need probably to go underground instead of above ground with transmission. We need maybe a different way to organize the transmission system so that we have less transmission and more regionalization, distribution of the energy production. This is this is something that you need an AI computer in order to think about what is the right place. Where do we put the nukes? Where do we put the solar? Where do we put the batteries? Where do we still have to use oil for the next 10 years? Where do we use natural gas for the next 20 years? We need, in my view, and I'm so conservative, I'm slightly to the right of Attila the Hun, according to my friends, but I know that we would not have the national system of roads that we have today if it wasn't for Eisenhower. We wouldn't have gotten to the moon if it wasn't for Kennedy. And so we need, in my opinion, somebody to step up and say, this is a national priority. Here's the date by which, and now how do we get there?
So there is some unavoidably political and government regulatory related components to this. Because if we do it with mostly solar and batteries, right, then you're looking at about 2 megawatts per acre, right? Or actually a megawatt per every 6 acres, right? So if I'm going to make a terawatt of power, right, and the U.S. has about 4,000 terawatts, roughly in that range of a terawatt power. So we double up, right? And we do it all with solar. We're looking at tens of millions of acres of land, right? So that ends up having a political component, right? Because like, whose land are we using to do that? And say, I'm going to buy all this land, and then, hey, I'm going to cut down trees. There's issues about putting it, in the desert because I'll be moving the species around, all that kind of stuff, right? So if we're doing it at this kind of scale, there's an issue about where do we put this stuff, and then how do we decide, and all that kind of stuff, and then how much delays we're going to have. China has chosen to pretty much use all of Mongolia and part of Tibet to say, here's the Gobi Desert. We're going to dump all this here. And then we have a bunch of high energy power lines that can run it over to where the people are, right? And the stuff, right? So they've said, because people think, oh, 1.4 billion people in China, 90% are by the coasts, by the, and then the interior is actually mostly empty, right? And then, so then the major provinces, areas, Mongolia, Tibet, whatever, they say, we have made the dictate that we're going to dump all this here. So then they have their plan of like, here's where we're going to dump uncounted terawatts of power for that thing, or if we do solar batteries. And we're making 8 nuclear power plants every year. And we're going to ramp that up to 10 times that level. And then we'll have both, right? At huge, insane level. So they got it solved for how they're going to have, 10 times the power, 100 times the power. So then how do we do that? If we're debating over, what this farmland is going to do, whatever we're going to do, we don't even start, and then they're at 100 times. Right. Because they're pounding out ahead and just saying, fast as we can.
Right. Yeah. So we're seeming to be on the same page here that
Right.
if Trump would announce tomorrow, are you listening, Donald?
Mhm.
This could be your moonshot. This could be, you be remembered by this, Donald.
Mhm.
Okay. You announce tomorrow, we want a terawatt of additional, is that what we need? A terawatt of additional energy
We
by
need many
2030?
terawatts. We need more and more. Yeah.
Oh, more than one. Okay. I always get caught up in the powers of 10 problem here.
Yeah.
So whatever the number is, pick a number. I don't care what the number is. We are going to be the number one energy per capita country in the world. We're going to continue to be that, and we're going to set up everything that's necessary to do that in order to allow for electrification, in order to allow for the Bitcoin or the cryptocurrency world, in order to allow for the AI things that we need to do, and also to set a pace, to set the potential to create the kinds of products and solutions that will bring India and Equatorial Africa and everybody else up to the same standards around the world. That is the goal. That's what I see. That's the vision.
Yes.
Donald, that's the vision. That's what leaders do. And you do. I'm not arguing that you haven't had vision, but this is the vision that I'm telling you need to go out and talk about right now. And then we can see maybe the next day, maybe Harris will come out and say, I think that's a great vision. I'm going to sign on. Anyway, then if we set the vision, the next step is always the hard part, is how do we manage that vision? And maybe it would be a competition. I love competitions. What do you think about a competition? Do we send out a 12-month, a 1-year competition where any university, any think tank, any group of people that want to get together can send in their idea of how this gets done, given the limitations. I mean, one of the big limitations is transformers. One of the big limitations is enough wire.
So I think that the different players, utilities on the solar side, grid people, with cooperation of states, local and federal government and agencies, can look at putting out various competitions to improve this process, because it is a big thing. And if you could figure out how to make things 20% better, twice as good, then that is something that's needs to be done. Yeah. So having a series of competitions ongoing to do that, and there are models for this. NASA has innovation advanced concepts where they have relatively inexpensive grants but they look for huge gains, and DARPA does that too from the military side. Right. They spend $3 billion a year on projects where they say, let's target huge gains. If you don't target huge gains, then you don't have a chance to achieve them. Right. So it's basically a series of ongoing things, and Department of Energy has some of those things, but it's something where if we're going to look to increase the spending and other things by multiple factors, then the advanced energy research projects, ARPA-E, should be scaled up. Other efforts should be done and then we should be looking at these, big goals for big improvements and to rapidly roll them out. I think there's been an issue with the advanced energy projects have not gotten the follow-up to scale up. So there's issues that need to be looked at, like what's the holdup? How can we get those things implemented? Because there's various technological things, and I've studied those things closely in terms of the energy research projects, and we do not deploy them. That we need to figure out how to get that to happen.
So I got a couple of detailed questions for you really quickly. One of those is in discussing this over the last week on the channel, we've been talking about whether or not the nuclear mini nukes and the smaller nukes, like the one that we just talked about on your channel last week, the mini nukes and the smaller nukes like China's putting in right now, or even the bigger nukes, are these competitive over 10 years, whatever, are they, or 20, I don't know what number you want to use, I don't care, over 25. Are they competitive with solar? Are they just different?
Both competitive and different. So China has made hundreds of gigawatts of solar, right? But that's when they have 100 gigawatts, that's the solar panel. Solar panel generates that amount of power, right? But then if I have a gigawatt of solar, and then I have a gigawatt of nuclear, the nuclear will generate about 10 times more actual power in terms of like
usable
8 terawatt hours versus 1 terawatt hour for the solar side of things.
Okay.
Because sun doesn't shine all the time, so then it's only working for some hours of the day, cloudy,
right,
a bunch of issues on the solar side of things, right? So even though you can say, okay, nuclear only has 60 gigawatt hours in China, but that's 300, 400 terawatt hours. The US has 100 gigawatts of nuclear built over many decades, haven't built any new stuff, but it's still running very well. 800 terawatt hours there. Then solar, even though you say, okay, it has nearly a terawatt of power, is actually not more than the nuclear. Right? So it is possible to build more nuclear, and mind you, the comparison is France versus Germany. France in the 1980s built their 50 nuclear power plants, right? And that generates 400, 500 terawatt hours of power. Germany spent 5 times as much money on solar and wind during the 2000s to 2020s. Less power than France, right? So if you look at the national scale, I'm building all this stuff out, then nuclear starts coming out great because they're running all the time. It's easier to run to one big nuclear plant, run the big power line to it, versus I got all these spread out square miles of solar here, and like wiring that all up. It's like, so there's just more inefficiencies to that whole process. And I'm devoting massive amounts of land to those things. So when you get to what are we doing at national scale, what are we doing at scale, that's when nuclear starts looking a lot better, right? And you have the things where France beat Germany. France did it, before Germany, so older technology, and then they did it faster. So you can do it faster. It can be better with nuclear, right? Solar, because no one's been fighting it and they put more and more money into it, is getting better. So, will it always be the case that solar, is inferior to nuclear, right? Because we're wasting decade after decade and not moving the nuclear forward, then it starts to get that way. But we definitely could, technologically possible, to mass produce lots of nuclear. We could make 100 gigawatt hours, so the amount that the United States has now, in 1 year, right? We could do that. And then we'd have the uranium, all that kind of stuff. And then it would be not interfering with the environment, right? Because nuclear just sitting there, all contained is one thing,
right? And
then no bad stuff is getting out of it, right? And so, if you were to look at it, via wind, if I do all that wind, I'm literally stopping the wind, right? With my wind power, right? It's literally interfering with the climate directly, and it will increase the temperature in the region, right? So people don't look at that and say, having it in a more compact form, that's a good thing. Having it more compact is a good thing. And there's nothing to stop us from mass producing, but we have to get to mass producing it and doing it all the time. Like, yes, oh, wow, your nuclear plant was so expensive. Yeah, because they built one of them over decades, right? Ever. And so then the last guys who did it, who built the 100 we did before, they're all dead.
Right.
So then the other guys are doing it new.
Yeah.
So of course they don't know what to do, and then it's all expensive. But if I have the same guy, I do it first. Okay, that didn't go so well. Let's do it better in the next time. And then you end up with China or France, where basically we built, 50 of these reactors, got better and better and better, and then they're always on time, always on budget. It's just like, yeah, if I make one Tower of Babel,
Yeah.
super expensive, very difficult.
And
I
God
build
knocks it down
100.
anyway.
I do 100 skyscrapers, 1,000 skyscrapers. I get better and better at it.
Right.
Same thing here. I need to get better. We need to get better at it and need to do it all the time. And it can't be, okay, I build one, no, let's debate it. It's like, no, we're committed. We can do this thing. We can make a lot of them.
Yeah. All right. I think that solves it. Okay, we've got the answer.
Yeah.
This channel right here.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to show this to Donald Trump. Elon, you already know it, but you want to do this DOGE department, this Department of Government Efficiency. No, Elon, let Chamath do that. Let the other
Sachs.
yeah. Let those guys do the Department of Government Efficiency. We need you to get into the ear of of Donald Trump, and I don't care who else, whoever's going to be in charge, and convince them that this is what needs to be #1 priority. It is a huge, huge deal. Last word? The
future has to be built. If you don't build it, it's not there.
There you go. Sounds brilliant.
Okay.
Thank you so much for follow him wherever he is. It's wonderful especially to follow his blog. Oh my goodness, it's so great. It's down below as always. All you got to do is check it out. And until next time, it's been great talking to you.